Co-innovation of the face and resolving identity. Wow, it sounds like a heavy topic, and perhaps it is. You and I have been trying to identify faces and recognize people our whole lives. But in particular, I've been spending the last 9 years with a team of scientists and engineers trying to do that through the eyes of a computer. And as our founder and chief scientist often says, it's not rocket science, it's not brain surgery, it's hard. So face recognition has come a long ways. It's evolving in the last 10 years, and you can look that up and see what's going on as NIST and the government makes a lot of reports about it. It used to be science fiction. It used to be something that was very expensive and quite inaccurate, but that's all changed now. And I can't tell you that it's 100%, and that's what this discussion is going to be about. If you look at this picture, this collage of people, they're all posing for the camera, and they're all looking pretty happy, generally speaking. And that's because they're on an iPhone at that time, taking a picture of themselves or being taken a picture of from a friend, and they're hoping that it's going to come back with the closest looking celebrity. It's an app we have out there called Face or Celebrity, and it's free. But can you imagine these people actually think the computer could recognize that face? I mean, you and I might be able to recognize that face if we knew that person, but that's very hard. That's very hard. And I'm going to talk more reasons why it's hard. And there's a lot of interest in what's going on in the face world because, you know, there's some issues now coming to bear on the technology. And it has to do with things like privacy. But I'm also going to tell you today about how good it's being used in places like law enforcement and security and safety and Department of Defense and DHS and those kind of places where it's really doing a good thing for us. So, you know, can a computer track us, you know, real time out there in the world? Maybe, but it's still not there 100%. The idea of a face in a crowd and the computer picking out everybody in that crowd, we're not there yet. But we're getting closer. I mean, is our face like the barcode put on your face, and it could just scan you and find you wherever you are? And the answer is no. But set up in the right conditions, that application could work. The face biometric is very interesting. There's a lot of information on your face, a ton of information, a lot of measurements. And all those measurements, like any biometric, whether it be iris or fingerprint, is used in a statistical process to try to compare it to another finger or a face or an iris and come up with a match. But all photographs come from cameras that are basically working in 2 dimensions. And so you're looking at a 2-dimensional object there. And that's where the limitations start. So you thought last year that the Navy SEALs captured Osama bin Laden, but actually in 2006, Anometrics captured him, and there's the proof. From a picture on the internet, from just a single image on the internet, we were able to make his 3D face and model his face and make it look real, even make it move on the computer screen. And what you're going to find as I talk about the technology a little bit, that's very useful information in being able to deal with the face in the wild. But it takes, and that's the topic of this day, it takes a lot of co-innovation to do it. And I have to say, I think that the government and the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, they're the biggest innovators of all. They're looking for all kinds of ways and trying all kinds of ways with many other innovators to make it happen, to be able to use that facial identity or biometrics in general for good use. In fact, there's an agency called the BIMA, the Biometric Identity Management Agency. It's just dedicated to that cause. And they have a lot of great technologies in there to identify, enable, and protect the warrior, for example. But below the surface of that, it's not just the government. We ourselves work with a lot of other fantastic premier co-innovators. And as you can imagine, in programs that support these kinds of agencies and applications, they become very large and unwieldy. But you got to make them useful in the field. How do you do that? So we work with companies like Booz Allen, like Lockheed Martin, like Raytheon, like 3M. These are large government systems integrators that pull together applications to make it really work. And then they count on the technology, and that's where my company comes into play. Another co-innovator we work with, very important, is the FBI. They have a good funding going towards them now to upgrade, if you will, all the biometrics. It's called the Next Generation Identification, NGI. You might have seen it in the press a little bit. And it's a fantastic system that's coming online over the next couple of years. It's really to help all law enforcement in the investigative process, is what it comes down to. And now the face biometric is a big part of it, I'm happy to say. In fact, they even now have a universal face workstation program that's going out to all law enforcement so that every police station in the country can access the database of 12 million people of felons and criminals or wanted people, right there in your little town where I live, like in Jackson. So FBI is doing amazing stuff. Again, we worked with them through a very strong partnership with Lockheed Martin, and we produced an application that was fantastic for their use. And so we continue to do that. And that leads to more and more innovators and more things that we're doing with law enforcement, even around the world. So in Zurich, the Zurich Forensic Police Department works with a company called Unidas out of Germany. And they're experts in the forensic face and working with victims, trying to identify who the culprit was. And morphologically trying to see that face against another face in a database. So Zurich has got a great application going there, and this trend continues. Probably our biggest poster child today is Pennsylvania, the Judicial Justice Network System. They are putting a central-based system, they deployed a central-based system that allows face recognition to be used by basically every policeman in the state of Pennsylvania. It's rolled out to over 500 agencies. They have face recognition, they have mugshot management, they have jail system management, and we're working with them in collaboration with a company called DataWorks Plus. So again, nothing happens on its own. It's really a collaboration, a co-innovation between companies and agencies. In fact, the JNet people won the Computer World 21st Century Achievement Award for basically the fantastic next generation system they built in Pennsylvania. And I think that we'll see a lot of law enforcement, all the big cities, look to that installation as the gold bar. And just one other example of kinds of things we do with the face biometric used in jail systems. In the Massachusetts County jail systems, all the inmates are basically now booked with their face and their face biometric, and that's used to track them and confirm going in and out of the jail. But it's also accessible now. That system, as it grows, is accessible to all other law enforcement in the state. And I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that in a mobile way, so that you can check, a police officer on the street could check on the fly if that person has been incarcerated before. And we work with a company there, another co-innovator called BI2 Technologies, a small company in Massachusetts that's making a multi-face and multi-biometric device that does iris, finger, and face. So how does it work? How do you get these 2D images to turn them into 3D? And the thing that's important is we're able to take any 2D image, and that's about the face in the wild. So it's not just that frontal look, it's the face at any angle. It goes through a process, and basically it's all about the math. And so, if you come to my office and you have a student that's studying math and he's going, why am I studying integrals and all this stuff? Well, if you come to my office, 40 years later, those guys still got the same books. And the math is a process called computational anatomy. It was invented by our founder, Dr. Michael Miller at Johns Hopkins University. And it basically, in a nutshell, takes the XY axis and converts it into the XYZ axis. So it actually estimates the facial model into 3D. And the result, like you saw in the Osama picture, is that this particular girl here, we come up with a 3D avatar, a model that can be used with much more information than ever before. And what you're seeing on the screen there is the texture versus the geometry. And all this information is used. So the use case is starting to grow more and more, and it's very exciting. And all of us now have our iPhones and our Android phones. We have our computer in our pocket. And likewise, out in the military and in law enforcement, this trend is moving towards them, and for very good use. We now have the face biometric on devices like this. Another collaborator, another co-innovator with us, a company called Raptor ID. They make basically the Humvee of iPhones. It's ruggedized, it weighs a little bit more, but it's still unique, it's compact, but you can throw it through a brick wall and it's not going to break. And it has 3 biometrics on it. So we're often, again, collaborating with other biometrics to help resolve that identity. So imagine this poor guy gets arrested, or at least pulled over, and he says, hey, I'm Joe Honest, but I don't have my driver's license with me. So the nice policeman there says, no problem, I'll help you out, sir. And so he takes your picture and looks it up on a DMV database and comes back with a guy named Harry Cheater. Not good, not good. In fact, it says his license was revoked. So oops, that's an issue. But this kind of a tool basically helps law enforcement get to the folks that they might really be looking for, just out in the street there as they do their job. And follow it through. It's being used now in the military. Think about the application of checkpoints. Think about how many contractors we have deployed in the field, servicing and helping our military set up their operating bases. They all have to be authorized, and there's a fear of the wrong person getting into the right place, like the suicide bombing situation. So a mobile device doing face recognition with the list of the authorized contractors, very convenient way of confirming that person is who he's supposed to be. Probably the ultimate application is surveillance. And that's the part that maybe scares some folks, like the ACLU, and there's even the Federal Trade Commission now just put out a report on guidelines on how to handle dealing with faces in the public. But surveillance is a difficult situation, but it's a very needed situation for our public safety and law enforcement officials. A photo like this from a long-distance surveillance camera will be quickly reduced to a picture like that. But if you look at that face, again, it's not going to work in a face recognition system very easily because it's highly angulated. And most face recognition systems are two-dimensional. And it's going to look at that face, and if that person's in a database, it was taken as a booking in a mugshot, it was frontal, it was straight on, and it's not going to match, it's not going to find that gentleman in the database. So if you put it through a process that creates the 3D and then also normalizes the face and even adds symmetry to it because the person's right side of his face is not shown, we're able to symmetrize, if you will, that face. Now you have something that may work in a database. In fact, that's what we're seeing with law enforcement. We're finding that person in the database. And then we take it one step further, and now that we find someone in the database, it's not like DNA. You don't know if it really is that person or not. You've got to look a little bit closer. And that's confirming the identity. And that's kind of like a forensic manual process. So we've built a tool around the 3D of those faces so that you can compare them and in different ways. You can put the 3Ds on top of each other. You can look at the face with a viewport and scan across the face and see if the facial features line up or not. And you can even compare the geometries. So this process now is being used, and it's a kind of information that's not yet usable in a court of law as evidence, but it does help the detective, get further along the line in the investigation as to if that person is a person we should pursue or not. And we have real-life cases now, which are very exciting for us in some state police departments. This particular face image was, they wanted to look up in a database of 6 million people, and when they put it through the face recognition system, what comes up typically in a face matching system is the top-end pictures that are similar to that face. And this was an actual result. You can see the top 5 were not similar at all. The only similarity is they're all looking to the right. So that indicated to me that the technology behind that face recognition system was all about pattern recognition. If you take that face now and put it through animatrix technology, the 2D and 3D technology, we can create this synthetic face. And this synthetic face came from the model, but now it was straightened out to XYZ equals 0. and now you have a straight-on face with the symmetry. And this really happened in this large database. The top 2 guys popped to the surface. So the upper left-hand picture now came up in the database in the lower right, whereas before it didn't. So it's really proof that this is an enabler, for our law enforcement guys to find who these people are if they're in there. This is kind of a scary picture, I guess, but it's basically a lineup. It's a digital lineup. And this is the kind of application that we didn't come up with. This is where the co-innovation is really fantastic. Our company, our friends in Germany, Unidas, they specialize in forensics and working with victims. So, how do you identify or remember the person who attacked you, who the culprit is? And so the classic way of doing that is, of course, bringing people in and lining them up. And who is that person? Is it him? Is it him? And then they do it a lot digitally now, too. And they look at the mugshots that way, because the mugshots are in the database. And so used to go through pages and pages of people in the book. Now you're doing it on a screen. Okay, maybe that's a little bit easier, but it's still a difficult situation, especially for the victim. What if you could take those faces and just convert them to 3Ds visually? And what if you can move it around and kind of make it look spooky, but like the real situation? That might jog the victim's memory as to who that person really is. And this is exactly what they're doing in Zurich right now with the Unidas product and our technology. And they're basically convicting people on it. They're able to identify people. So it's pretty Halloween spooky, but it helps, trust me. So we see a lot of applications still coming in the face biometric business, and there's some very important agencies and companies that are doing this kind of work. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the Amber Alert System, the FBI giving parents now the ability to register their children in a controlled, secure FBI database to have their faces in those databases just in case, and it's secure. And then, basically capturing bad guys by their investigations. And the military continues on this focus. The face biometric, or I should say all biometrics together, has become the most important weapon of all. More than a gun is resolving who the people are in front of you and being safe and secure. And there's a lot of scary things happening on our borders. And so we're now looking at basically catching the bad guys doing these kinds of things, like human trafficking, helping the ICE group, the Immigration and Customs folks. So the net result is we're hoping the face biometric, I believe it is, a biometric that's going to make the world a little bit safer, and at least will make me feel a little bit more secure, like this pussycat. Thanks.